have to wait to have a drink after one of these things, and you can do it in the middle of it. It's kind of fun. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank Matt. I really appreciate you asking me to do it. I'm honored to be here as well. And my horse that I newly acquired is racing tonight, so this is how important this is. I'm missing her to be here tonight. I'm very excited about it, though. I'm sure she'll do fine. So you kind of he told you a little bit about my background. I'm just going to give you a little bit more on how I got here, and then I'll get into kind of my story and my message. I am from Spokane, and my mom was a teacher, an administrator. She still is, so from an educational background. My dad was a basketball coach for 32 years, boys, so I was absolutely raised in a gym. I always kind of was a little regretful I was born a girl. I wanted to be a boy, but that was not the case. So, and I was an athlete in high school. I played basketball, volleyball, loved it. A little too social at times, but I really enjoyed school. I loved it. I just had the most fun ever. And then Washington State, like he said, it was a great place to go to school. I had a lot of fun. That's where I started studying journalism, and I knew I wanted to do something in sports, but I wasn't exactly sure. It was such a great school that you kind of got to get behind the camera, in front of the camera, decide what you wanted to do. I did the weather one night, then I do the hard-hitting news, not my thing, then got to do sports one night and thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. So then I moved to Seattle right after college, got to Fox Sports Northwest, which is in Seattle, right outside of Seattle. And that's really not the route most people take. Usually they'll go to a small market, kind of get their feet wet. I was delusional and thought I'm just going to get my foot in the door and just beg them until they put me on air, which is actually what happened. I really did. I got my reel together. Took a long time, took a lot of force and a lot of just saying, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. Finally they did. They let me, and it really was a blessing. So I got to do a little sideline, got the bug. I thought, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So I did some football sideline for the Huskies, which is actually our rival, but good group of people, University of Washington. That led me to running with the Pack, which was at the time the Pac-10. Got to travel to all the different schools, do stories on their athletes, their students. It was an absolute blast. I had so much fun. That led me to Los Angeles when I got to do a show called Running with the Pack, which was, like I said, that show that I went to all different places, but I had to live in Los Angeles. Okay, that's my background work-wise. Now we get to the message at hand. So I am in LA, which is somewhere I never thought I would be. Didn't really know a lot of people, which we'll get to, Andy, who I met shortly thereafter. But let's start at the beginning, really, my story. So I was raised by my parents. One was Catholic, one was not, which was, at the time, I didn't realize, but it was actually kind of difficult because my dad was a devout Catholic, church every Sunday. My mom, obviously not so much, so I didn't really realize at the time the importance of going to Mass because I saw my dad go all the time, and I would go with him on occasion, but then my mom wouldn't go, so I didn't think it was as important. So at the time growing up, it was kind of a struggle for me. I didn't really realize how important faith was or how important it would be later in life. I didn't really have any Catholic friends. All my friends went to different churches, so I didn't really have that group, that support at the time while I was being raised, which is why later on when I found my faith, which I'll get into, it was just so important. Yeah, like I said, I was a little confused by that. But when I got to LA, okay, so I met Andy at a bar in Venice Beach where, you know, love always happens. If you've been to Venice, it's a very, very weird place. But looked over across the way and saw him. I noticed him, I'll say that, very athletic. He was a football player, just bigger than life, 6'3", gorgeous man. But I noticed him, I saw a little buddy next to him. I kept looking over. His friend Peter walks over to a girlfriend and myself and says, "Hi, I'm Peter. I'm an agent. I'm a Hollywood agent." And he was the epitome of Hollywood agent. You know, love him he's not one of my best friends, but kind of had that swagger about him. He said, "I want you to meet my friend Andy." Andy walks over, and it was the funniest thing that's ever happened. Peter said, "This is my friend Andy. He's from Washington." I said, "Oh, I'm from Washington." He's like, "Really? Well, you guys should kind of start talking. Where are you from?" I asked him, "Where is he from?" He said, "You've never heard of it." I said, "My dad was a basketball coach. I've been to every tiny town in the entire state." He said, "Starts with a Z." I said, "Zilla. I grew up an hour and a half from there." So right off the bat, something's crazy. The second question, Peter could see there's a little connection here. He said, "Well, we have to ask you the next question. Are you Catholic?" I thought, I've never been asked that in a bar, but yes, I am Catholic. And you saw Andy's eyes just light up. I'm like, oh, we're going somewhere with this. So we talked for about 2 hours about our faith and a little bit about where we're from, and we actually had a few things in common. We knew a bunch of the same people. He was an amazing athlete in Zilla, so we had a lot of connections. So we decided we were going, of course, the next step, we're going to go on a proper date. So he shows up a couple days later to pick me up in a beat-up Ford Explorer. You know those things, the Ford Explorers that have been driving around forever and ever. Picked me up, and it was clean, though. I'll give him that. So I walk out, and he opens the door. I'm not joking. There's a Bible on the front seat, St. John Bosco prayer card, right above the visor, and I thought, what are these planted here? This cannot be true. This is not right. I've never seen this before in my life. Opens up the car door with this little thing he has to maneuver because it's so old and beat up. You have to like shimmy something, and so he figured out a way to get in the car. We moved the Bible so I could sit down, and we go out to dinner. It was just a confusing thing. I was like, you can't be this wonderful. There's got to be a catch, but I'm gonna keep going with it. So a month into it, he really revealed the depths of his beliefs. I knew he was very religious. I knew that the Catholic faith meant so much to him, but I didn't realize it until we really started dating. And here's a kicker: our second date, daily mass. Which, how often, have you ever heard of such a thing? Yeah, we went to daily mass for our second date. And I thought, this is something. And we talked a lot about his growing up, and something that he revealed to me is he had grown up believing he was most likely going to be a priest. He was a standout athlete, very smart, and had all the gifts, I would say, that a priest needs, but he also was so social and such a great friend, and he wanted to one day be a father and a husband, so he had a lot of struggles with that. We talked a lot about that, and something that was very special that at the time I maybe took for granted, he decided to wait till marriage to his wife. He was remaining celibate until he got married, which is something, when you're growing up and you talk to friends, you don't really realize just what a gift that is to give to your partner. And he had made that decision, and that was something at the time. I had never met someone who had done that. I really hadn't, and I thought this is such a special thing. And we're still dating, we're getting into it, but yeah, he had waited his entire life. He never the kind of guy, though, that would push his beliefs on people. Sometimes you'll get into a conversation, and that wasn't the first thing he led with. You get to know him, and then he was open to talking about it, and he was just such a wealth of knowledge. He woke up, said his prayers, read the Bible. He was just so God-fearing, and he dedicated his life to the Lord, which was just something that I was so impressed with. And then the great thing about it is being around someone like that, you're challenged to become more like that. And that was a gift that I got from dating him. I explained to him that I wasn't raised like that. I wasn't raised the way you were. It was such a gift from your parents to instill these beliefs in you. And he knew that his family is they're all such amazing people. They always focused on the Lord and their family first, and I was envious of that because you could see it when they got all together, and I wanted to be a part of that. I wished I would have been raised that way. I had some envy of that. We had to work through that a little bit. So I explained that, my parents were completely supportive of all that faith. Like I explained to you earlier, I was a little confused growing up just how Catholic I was or just how faithful I was. I was a bit confused, and like I said, I was a little bit jealous of that he got to do that. So our dating then became going to daily mass, going to mass, of course, every Sunday. Whenever we were traveling, he played football. We found a church, whatever city we were. Dailymass.com was second after Google because we had to find it no matter where we were. It became kind of a little fun game, actually. And then I'd ask questions that I had never asked before. Certain things that I could talk to him about that I couldn't talk to anyone about. I explained that I wanted to explore my faith. It just had never really come all that naturally to me. So he really was my faith advisor, I guess you could say, and taught me the rosary, which I had been saying wrong for 27 years. We did it once together, and I thought, I'm not even close. I'm way off. No one ever told me. So we got through that. That was great. So now I know how to say it correctly, so I won't be embarrassed. But that was something that really was something we would do together, which I really appreciated. And we lived the right way. We lived the right way. We lived for God, grace before every meal, which, I grew up doing that on Christmas when we had people over, but it was never before every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and just became a way of life, and I loved it. Like I said, he had saved himself. We never slept in the same room. If we were visiting someone, that was always the case. If he had to come stay with me, stayed on the couch, and that became our way of life. It became comfortable, and it was something, like I said, growing up, I never saw that, and I loved it. It was just something that was very special to me. We prayed together every single night before we went to bed, honored each other through God. He honored himself, he honored me, I did the same with him, and everything was based around God. It was like no other relationship I had ever had before.